Okay, so let's go through the items you'll need for this build. So firstly, you'll need 2 dowels. Mine are at the length of 1.2 meters each, with a thickness of 4 millimeters, but these lengths can be changed to suit the size of your kite. Then you'll need a good amount of string to use as your flying line, but make sure your string is decently long, cause 5 meters of flying line may not work too well. I've also heard that fishing line could be a good alternative, so you have that lying around, you can use that. You'll also need some tape, scissors, and a marker. But for the kite material, I'll be using a garbage bag, but you can use a clear plastic bag, newspaper, or even just regular paper. Just something that's light enough and doesn't allow air to flow through. But I'll be using a garbage bag because it seems more durable than the other materials, and it also looks nice. Lastly, you'll need a ruler to measure your lines. I didn't have a long enough ruler, so I'm using this wood and tape measure. Sorry in advance for the bad camera angles, because this is quite a big project, so I'm filming this on the floor. We'll first need to cut along the close end of the bag and the sides, so we're left with a flat piece of fabric.
But be careful because scissors are sharp.
Nice.
So this is where I stuffed up. I think I was too excited and just decided to cut it in half. But when I laid it down, I realized that it was way too narrow. So after 5 minutes of solid regret, I figured I was still able to fix my mistake by taping the dowels back together into the right length. So while I tape the sticks tight, let me try to explain to you how you make the shape of your diamond kite. So I came up with this simple ratio for your dowels to make a basic diamond shaped kite. And it doesn't matter how long your dowels are, it will still work. So firstly you want to line up both of your dowels next to each other. Then you want to mark off 3/4 on both of them. Once you have them both marked off, you will need to top off the top of one of the pieces, making it now only 3/4 tall, leaving you with a longer piece and a shorter piece. Then you want to get the shorter piece and turn it and put it center with the 3/4 mark of the longer piece. Then you just need to line up the ends of the dowels, and there you have the basic kite shape. Now you can just tape off the 4 corners and put a string through the middle, and bam, your kite's done. So once I was done taping up my mistake, I was left with 2 pieces, one at 1.2 meters and the other at 0.9 meters. When lining up the dowels, make sure that they're straight with a 90 degrees angle. I'm using a book to help make sure mine are straight. Then after that, you just gotta mark off the tips or the ends of the dowel, then get a ruler and line it up, then cut it out. Cutting it might take a while, but boy will it be worth it. If you're wondering why I left the tabs on the sides of the kite, I'll explain that in a little bit. So once you finish cutting out your kite, we can move on to taping down the dowels. I'll start by taping down the vertical longer piece at both ends. I'll be adding a piece of tape down and across to make sure they're tight and they won't fall off during flight. So the reason why I left the tabs on the side was so I could make it into kind of a pocket to hold the horizontal dowel in place, but at the same time be able to take it out, making the whole kite more portable as I can now roll it up. But I wasn't able to find any tutorials or videos on how to do this, so I kind of just winged it. You'll want to make the pocket cover just enough of the ends to hold down the dowel securely, but you wouldn't want to make the pockets too deep, as this will make it too difficult for the dowels to be taken out. I then added a piece of tape down the tab just in case, to lower the risk of the dowel poking through the kite. I then folded the flap in half, taped it down to create the pocket. Also repeating on the other side. So this is how the kite looks all taped up. I went back and added a little bit more tape around the pockets to make sure that they don't pop open when flying. So I wanted to personalize my kite by adding a cool colorful graphic onto it. So I tested acrylic paint, that didn't seem to work and would have took me way too long to get the coverage I needed. So I settled with spray paint because I had a couple of cans laying around. So then I went in to sketch my idea. Then I decided on a flying fish because flying fish are awesome. So once I had my idea down, I got a black permanent marker and sketched out my idea on the kite. Then I started to mask off the design. Masking off the design took me the whole afternoon, but even though it took a long time, it was quite easy to do and I kind of enjoyed the process. Once I had everything masked off, I then painted the kite. Firstly by putting a white base coat on, then adding on the red and yellow paint because that's the only paint I had. But I then realized that the black permanent marker I used would show up on top of the paint for some reason. I wasn't really sure why, but it wasn't that bad because my design still looked pretty dope. So after a long day of masking and painting the kite, I finally took off all the tape and my design was revealed. And it looked amazing. But then I found it a little bit weird why the paint was still sticky after a couple of hours of drying. So then I turned to the back of the cans that I used and read through the instructions and found that the paint doesn't stick well on
Polyethylene.
So then I went to the Google and typed up what the material of the garbage bags are, and then I realized
Polyethylene.
So my design looks pretty cool overall, but it can be scratched off fairly easily. So after a couple of days of use, the paint will probably disappear. But oh well, we can all learn from our mistakes, and it was a fun process. So to attach the flying line, you'll want to poke 2 diagonal holes along the corners of the dowel, making sure you tie it off tight, but remembering that the dowels face up, so when you're flying the kite you wouldn't be able to see the dowels. For my scenario, I decided to use a noose knot because I wanted my knot to be adjustable so I can loosen it to take out the dowel piece, but also tying it back when assembling it. But if you decide to not make a removable horizontal dowel, I recommend you tightly tying or taping the 2 dowel pieces together. You can then choose to make a string reel, but I had a bamboo stick which worked great as a handle. The last but important step is to add a kite tail, as this weighs down the back of the kite, allowing it to catch more wind. I've read that your kite tail should be 5 times the length of your kite with a thickness of roughly around 5 centimeters. I didn't have a long enough piece of material, so I will instead be using the scrap I had left over, cutting it to the equivalent of 5 times in length. Once you have your tail cut out, all you need to do then is tie it to the kite and bam, your kite is complete. So I rolled up my kite and carried it in a cardboard tube, then I scooted down to the local park to see if my kite worked. Assembling the kite was quite easy and fast, and once I had the kite assembled, it just lifted off the floor instantly. I was actually very surprised at how well the kite worked, and it instantly brought a smile to my face seeing my hard work. This homemade kite just flies so well. It actually doesn't need to be extremely windy for a kite to fly. As long as you see some leaves move and you can feel some breeze against your face, your kite should be able to fly quite well. Even if you feel like there's no wind and your kite isn't flying too well, try slowly winding out your kite, as there could be some wind higher up. If you're still watching this video, I highly recommend you build a kite, just for yourself or even with the kids. For how easy and cheap and fast it is to build, I think it's very rewarding, and it's a super fun weekend project for anyone at any age. This kite making experience is kind of like life. Sometimes you make mistakes, but as long as you learn from your mistakes and you stay persistent and have fun, the sky's the limit. And no matter how low you feel, remember that this beautiful flying beast of a kite all started from a garbage bag.